right, you may call your next witness.
Will Turner.
Right here. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this case is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
What is your name?
Will Turner.
And Will, where are you employed?
At the Yazoo, Mississippi Delta Levee Board.
Okay, what do you do with them?
I operate equipment.
Okay. Back in December of 2014, were you on the Cortland Volunteer Fire Department?
I was.
And what were your responsibilities with them?
I was a firefighter.
And did you get a call sometime after 8 o'clock or tone out sometime after 8 o'clock on December the 6th?
I did.
And what was the nature of that call?
A vehicle fire at the tree farm in Cortland on Main Street.
Do you remember where you were when you got the call?
At my residence.
Okay, and how close was that to where the tree farm was?
6 to 7 minutes.
Okay. And did you in fact respond?
I did.
Okay. Tell the jury, please, what you observed upon your arrival at the scene.
When I got there, I was fourth or fifth one there. I observed a girl burned tremendously standing at the back of the fire truck and a car on fire in the edge of the woods. So I immediately went to the girl, and they were getting a turnout jacket and blankets and stuff to lay her down on the ground with. Helped her get on that, laid her on the ground and got her covered up. And then I immediately went to put the fire out with the other firefighter cook.
Okay. Now, at some point, were you near Cole with, did you learn later on who the girl was?
I did learn later on who she was.
And did you learn it was Jessica Chambers?
That's right.
And at some point, were you near where Cole Haley was with Jessica?
I was. Cole walked up with the blanket to the back of the truck as we were laying her on the ground and covered her up with a blanket.
Okay. And did you observe Cole attempting to talk with her?
Cole was trying to talk to her then before I stepped away to the vehicle fire.
Okay. And were you able to hear what she was saying?
It was loud there. The trucks were there, running, pumps running, people talking. You couldn't hear anything.
Okay. Were you able to make out any sounds that she may have been?
Later, after we got the fire knocked down enough, I went back over there and was trying to get her name and who she was. This was before I found out who she was, who did it to her, and all you could hear was, just, she was trying to get something out, but I couldn't hear.
Okay.
So.
And did you stay there very long? Next to her?
Probably a minute. And then I backed off again. By this point, it was a lot of people around her. A whole lot of people.
And at some point later on, did you see somebody that sparked your suspicion?
I did.
All right, tell the jury about that.
As Jessica had already been transported, nobody else was there. The firemen and the sheriff's office and a few other folks were there, but a guy came walking up to where our crime scene tape was, and I asked him to leave, and he wouldn't leave. He just kind of stared through me like I wasn't there. I asked him to leave again. He wouldn't leave. I told him, I said, I'll just get a deputy to escort you off, and that's when he turned around and walked off. He had a blue shirt on, and before he got out of my eyesight, he was still looking over his shoulder, and he took his blue shirt off and had a white shirt on.
Okay. And did you, in fact, get a tag number for him when he left?
I did not get the tag number personally, but the tag number was transferred straight to Daniel Cole from somebody that was down the street.
Okay. And did you later learn that that person was identified?
I did.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross.
Good afternoon, Mr. Turner.
Good afternoon.
By the time you arrived on that evening, and when you saw Miss Jessica, I believe you testified that there were a lot of people around her at that point.
When I arrived, it was 3-4 people around her at that point. By the time I tried to talk to her, it was quite a few there.
And once you were close enough to see her, she was standing? Is that
She was still standing when I pulled up.
Okay.
Whether on her own will or they had picked her up to get a blanket under her, I couldn't tell you how long she had been standing. I just know she was standing at the back of the fire truck with the fireman holding her arm.
Okay. And at some point, did you see her lying on the ground?
I helped lay her on the ground.
You helped lay her on the ground. Okay. There was, I believe there was some testimony from you about there being another person that you noticed on the scene after everything had been cleared away? Is that
That's
what you were
correct.
saying? Okay. And describe that encounter with that person again.
Like I just said, he walked up to the caution line the caution tape as I was there. I asked him to leave. It took 3 times to ask him to leave, and he just had a blank stare on his face. I've never seen a stare like that in my life.
Okay.
Stare straight through you.
Right.
Towards the vehicle.
Toward the vehicle? Okay. And when you said he stared, you had never seen a stare like that in your life?
It was like he didn't even see me there, never heard me or anything. He just was looking.
Okay. And did it make you feel?
It made me very nervous.
Okay. Now, there was information about there being a tag you testified to, a tag number.
That's correct. The tag number did get brought from the vehicle he left in back to Daniel Cole.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Do you recognize that statement there, Mr. Turner?
I do.
Okay. And you completed this or filled this statement out 12/8, about 2 days after December 6th?
That's correct.
Okay. And in this statement, it appears you felt compelled. Well, let me do this. Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to have this statement marked and admitted into evidence.
Any objection? All right, be marked and admitted.
Number 10, marked and admitted. If you will, Mr. Turner, if you would read that statement.
While at the scene, I noticed a middle-aged black male standing between Pope's rescue truck and Cortland's engine. He was wearing dark-colored pants and a light blue t-shirt and a ball cap. He had on glasses and a Bluetooth device in his right ear. I approached him and told him he had to leave, that this was a crime scene. He didn't respond with words, instead just gave me a out-of-the-way look. He then looked at the woods in front of the car like he was looking for something. I told him again he had to leave, and if he didn't want to leave, I would get a sheriff's deputy to escort him off. The man then turned and gave me the same look as before and started walking back down the road. As I watched him start walking, I noticed him keep turning around and looking up in the woods by the car. I told Brandy Davis something just wasn't right about him, and he seemed suspicious. The man then took his light blue t-shirt off and was wearing his white undershirt. Brandy called his son, who was sitting at the bottom of the hill in his truck, to watch for the black male with a white t-shirt on and glasses and a ball cap. We watched him until he got out of our sight. Brandy's son saw the man get into a car. He got the tag number and texted it to Brandy. We then gave it to Daniel Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. I tender the witness, Your Honor.
Redirect?
No, he may be finally excused.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir, for coming. You're finally excused. You may remain in the courtroom or you can leave. Your choice, sir. May I call your next witness?
Sandra Haley.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give involving this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right.
Good afternoon. Would you state your name, please?
Sandra Haley.
Miss Haley, are you a member of the Pope Volunteer Fire Department?
Yes, I am.
And can you tell this jury approximately how far it is from Cortland to Pope?
Maybe 2 miles.
Routinely, when Pope gets a call or Cortland gets a call, will you call the other agency out to help?
Yes, dispatch does.
And would you describe, we've already heard some testimony regarding an EMR. What is an EMR?
Emergency medical service.
And are you in fact an EMR?
Yes, I am.
And are there other EMRs on the Pope Volunteer Fire Department?
Yes, it is.
On December the 6th of 2014, did Pope Volunteer Fire Department respond to help Cortland on a structure fire prior
Yes.
to the Jessica Chambers call?
Yes, they were.
And did you respond to that call?
Yes.
And ultimately, that fire was, I'll call it a fire, that structure fire, or I believe it was smoke, was cleared.
Yes.
Where were you when the call came out to Heron Road?
I believe we was at the fire station.
You had already returned to Pope?
Yes.
And did you in fact respond to Heron Road?
Yes.
And how did you respond?
POV.
All right, tell this jury what POV means.
Personal owned vehicle.
You went in your own vehicle.
Yes, I did.
And who were you with?
My husband, my 3 grandchildren.
Who is your husband?
James Thomas Haley.
And is Thomas Haley also a member of the Pope Volunteer Fire Department?
And yes, he is.
And how old were your grandchildren at the time? Do you recall?
No.
Okay. Were they young?
They're young.
And when you arrived on Heron Road, were there multiple fire department officers there?
Yes.
And did you and your husband exit your personal vehicle?
Yes,
Did you give any instructions to your grandchildren?
I did.
What were those instructions?
Do not get out of this car.
Did they follow your instructions?
They did.
When you got out of your personal vehicle, am I correct in stating the jury's going to see this scene later? You have to walk up a hill to the scene.
Yes.
When you walked up the hill, will you describe what you saw and what you were hearing?
Well, it's real noisy. Fire trucks, ambulance, people everywhere. Sheriff Department vehicles, sheriff people walking around. Rubberneckers, firefighters. Just a lot of stuff going on.
We've already heard the term rubberneckers. I won't go back into that. But there were other people on the scene that were not firefighters.
Correct.
And I'm not up by her, but other people out on the road.
Right.
Now, did you walk up to where the female was, where she was positioned?
No. I stopped right there at the stretcher.
All right, well, the stretcher was there, so was MedStat already on scene when you arrived?
Yes.
And where was the stretcher located in connection to her body?
Well, her body was like over here and the stretcher was like right here, so it was pretty close.
Where did you position yourself at the stretcher?
And close to where the head would be.
And was she on the stretcher at the time? I believe you already answered that.
When I first got there?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
Okay. And was she actually lifted onto the stretcher?
did your husband assist in lifting her on the stretcher?
I'm really not for sure. He says he was, but that's just him.
You're not for sure?
I'm
Tell
not
me
for
you're
sure.
not. Once she was placed on the stretcher, you said you were sitting beside her head.
Yes.
Who else do you remember positioned around the stretcher?
Well, Daniel Cole was at her head. My husband's on my right. Brandy Davis was on my left, and I couldn't tell you who else was on down the line.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to get you to just show me from where you're sitting, point right shoulder, left shoulder, straight in front. Where was her head?
In front of me here on the right. Up.
With your other hand, tell me where Brandy Davis was.
Right here.
So he was behind you in relation to her head.
Yes.
While you're positioned next to her head, what was Daniel Cole attempting to do?
Take a picture. He had papers in his hand, and I took the paper so he could get his picture, and I pulled the blanket back because he kept saying when they put the blanket on her, do not cover her head, do not cover her head. So I pulled the blanket up so he held the papers in my right hand, pulled the blanket up with my left, and he took a picture.
Do you know why he was trying to take a picture?
Well, I asked him, and he said for identification.
While you were sitting there, was Brandy steadily talking over your shoulder?
Yes.
What was Brandy saying?
He was trying to ask her what her name was.
And did you in fact bend down and relay that information?
Well, at first I was just asking her standing up, but I couldn't hear nothing she was saying.
Well, let me start. What was her condition? Please describe me her condition. I understand.
She was covered up in a blanket.
What was the condition of her face?
She was covered up with a blanket. I could not see her face, but just a little bit of it, and it was dark.
You can't describe the extent of her burns.
No,
Did you ask her name?
I did.
And did she have a response?
Well, yes, but I couldn't hardly understand her until I got down to her head, closer to her mouth, so I could hear her.
Did you hear a response?
I did.
What did that response sound like?
Essie, Jesse. I jumped up and I said, Brandy, Jesse, Jessica, Jesse. And somebody from the crowd hollered out Jessica Chambers. And I leaned down to her and I said, honey, is your name Jessica Chambers? And she shook her head, yes.
How loudly was she able to speak?
Like I said, you have to bend down to hear because you couldn't hear her standing up.
Is this why she was laying on the stretcher?
Yes.
Now, was Brandy Davis still talking behind your ear?
Some, yes. And then he started asking, who did this to you?
But is he over your shoulder while he's asking that?
Yeah, he's right over here on my left, yeah.
And where's her head?
Right over here.
And did you in fact relay that question?
I did. I bent down and asked her, honey, who did this to you?
What did you hear?
I asked her twice and she said, sounded like to me, Eric, that's what I heard.
That's what it sounded like to you.
Eric.
You said you had to bend down to her ear. When you heard Eric, was that loud?
No, that's the reason I had to lean down so I could hear her.
Let me ask you, during your entire attempts to communicate with Jessica Chambers, did you ever see Brandy Davis have a conversation with her?
No.
Where was Brandy Davis standing while you were attempting to communicate with her?
Right here on my left, standing right beside my left shoulder.
Would it have been possible to hear over your left shoulder what she was saying with all that noise?
What, for Brandy to hear what she was saying?
Yes, ma'am.
General object to speculation.
All right, rephrase your question, please. You're asking of what another witness could hear.
Yes, sir.
So I sustain the objection.
Now, after, I'm assuming she was loaded in the ambulance there on scene.
Well, after she said Eric, David Gamble told Thomas to go down to the Baptist church for air evac. So I left and went with him.
You were riding with your husband.
I did.
And did Thomas go assist in the air evac?
Yes, he did.
So you left the scene before Jessica departed?
Yes.
Your Honor, I tender the witness.
Cross.
Good afternoon, Ms. Haley.
Hi.
Just a few questions for you. You testified that MedStat was already there when you got there.
Yes.
And in dealing with the stretcher, I believe, you said you were close to where Jessica's head would be.
At the stretcher, yes.
So, at one point you were standing. You agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And you couldn't hear her at that point because
No.
you were standing.
Not when they put her on the stretcher. I could not hear what she was saying,
Okay.
if she was saying anything at that time.
Yes. And then what happened is that, so you could hear her better, you got down to her face
Yes.
and leaned down so you could hear her better.
Yes.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Do you recognize that statement, Ms. Haley?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is your signature on the second page?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, I'd like to have her statement marked and admitted into evidence at this time.
Any objection?
No, sir, Your Honor.
Be marked and admitted.
Number 11, marked and admitted. Okay. Ms. Haley, if you will, just go to the bottom of your statement on the first page. Let's go about 3 lines up. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
3 lines from the bottom. Start what says, "I bent down."
I bent down and said, "Honey, who did this to you?" All I could get or understand was Eric.
So that's consistent with what you're saying today. You agree?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
No, sir, Your Honor. I would ask Ms. Haley be finally excused.
Ms. Haley, you're finally excused. You can remain in the courtroom or you may leave. Your choice. You may call your next witness.
Thomas Haley.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give involving this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Good afternoon.
Good evening.
What is your name?
James Thomas Haley.
And Mr. Haley, are you a volunteer firefighter with the Pope Fire Department?
I am.
How long you been doing that?
A little over 25 years.
On December the 6th of 2014, do you remember that day?
Yes.
And I want to ask you, prior to going out on Heron Road, did y'all assist Cortland with the call on Old Highway 51?
Yes.
And did you come up there in a truck, a fire truck, or your personal vehicle to the old 51 fire?
We was in a personal vehicle.
Okay, and did the Pope unit actually respond?
Right, yeah.
Okay, and when you're running your personal vehicle, do you have your lights on?
Most of the time we have headlights on and flashers on.
Okay, and you actually have flashers installed in your vehicle, is that correct?
No, sir.
All right, you said you had your flashers on.
Just regular Regular car flasher,
regular
emergency flashers.
flashers.
Right.
Okay, do you have any kind of a red flasher or anything of that nature to show you're a firefighter?
I do in my pickup.
Okay, were you in your pickup that night?
No.
Okay. When you got to the scene, how long were y'all on the scene there at Old 51? Do you remember?
It wasn't long because it wasn't a major fire like we thought. It wasn't that long.
And you said the Pope unit responded as well?
Yes.
Okay, when that unit responds, does it have its emergency lights on?
Yes.
And do y'all require the lights to be on the scene the entire time until you clear the scene?
Right.
Okay. Then did you leave from there and go back to the Pope fire station?
Yes.
Okay. Now, these folks are from Starkville, or the Pope, the Oktibbeha County area. Where is Pope?
Pope is from here. You go hit 51, go south about 7 miles, and to get to our station, you go Pope Marley Road and go out Pope Marley Road. Maybe a mile would be on the right.
Okay. Coming up the interstate from Starkville, would you get off the Pope exit?
You can get off at Pope exit and come down Hence Road to Highway 51 south. You go south about a mile, hit Pope Marley Road, take a left off of 51, and you go maybe a mile, and Station 14 is on the right.
Okay. So it's near the interstate,
Yes, sir.
near the Pope exit, as y'all came up last night. Now, Cortland, there is no exit off the interstate for Cortland, is that right?
No, sir. Well, you can get off at Pope exit and go 51 north and go to Cortland,
Okay. And what's the next exit after Pope?
Batesville.
Okay, so you'd have to go Batesville to Highway 51 and back south, is that right?
Right.
Okay. So Cortland basically sits between Pope and Batesville.
Pretty close.
Okay. When you got back to the fire station, did y'all get another call?
Yes, sir. It was a little while after we got back.
And what was the nature of that call?
Was to assist Station 8, which is Cortland Fire Department, with a call fire.
And did you in fact respond?
Yes, we responded to that.
I believe your wife testified that y'all responded in your personal vehicle.
Yes, sir.
And you had your grandkids with you, is that right?
Right.
Okay. And how long do you think it took you to get from there? Did you know where Heron Road was, where the street farm was?
Yes, sir.
And how long did it take y'all to get there, do you remember?
Probably about 4 minutes, maybe 5 tops.
And what'd you find when you got there?
When we pulled up on the scene, we kind of parked down from the scene because we had the grandkids. We didn't want them to see what was going on. And we went up the hill. The car was on the left side of the road, which is south side of the Heron Road. It was on fire. The fire truck was positioned. Another fire truck was positioned on right next to the gate. And the victim was laying at the back of the fire truck.
Okay. Did you know who it was?
Not at that time, no.
Okay. Did you subsequently learn it was Jessica Chambers?
Sir?
Did you subsequently learn it was Jessica Chambers?
Yes.
Now, when you got to the scene, what did you do?
Excuse me. When we got to the scene, we assisted the medical personnel, the ambulance crew. We assisted them on getting her up on the stretcher.
Okay. Was the Pope unit already on the scene when you got there, or was it en route?
No, sir, it was, they come in about the same time I did. He was parking as we was pulling up.
Okay, and where did the Pope fire truck actually park?
Our rescue parked on the left-hand side of the road down from Station 8's truck.
Okay, and that would be, so you had Station 8's truck. Now, was she behind Station 8's truck?
Yes, sir.
And then your rescue unit, and is that a regular fire truck or a smaller unit?
It's a mini pumper. It's a rescue pumper type truck. It's got medical supplies on it, plus water in case for car fires and stuff like that. But you got water and you got medical supplies on it.
Okay, is it kind of similar to the brush truck it was on scene, as far as a small unit?
Similar, but it's A small pumper.
Okay. And it parked behind, so it would have been right behind Jessica and the Station 8 truck.
Yes, sir, it was down the hill a little bit from their truck.
You have any idea approximately how far?
Not even the length of this room. It wasn't even 30 yards or less. It was.
And where was the ambulance?
The ambulance was to the right of Cortland's engine.
Okay. So when you arrive, you've got Cortland's engine, Cortland's brush truck, the ambulance, and then your unit.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what did you do to assist the medical personnel?
When we do our helping them, we picked her up and put her on the stretcher, help get her on the stretcher, cover her up, and fasten her down to the stretcher so there won't be no movement or anything like that.
Was she on a spine board?
I don't remember.
Okay. Did you talk to her?
No, sir, I didn't talk to her.
And were you able to hear anything that she said?
No, sir.
Did you help with the landing zone?
Yes, sir. We, during the process of getting her ready to go, put her in the ambulance and all that, another fireman, Hall Thomas, go set up, we call it LZ, which is a landing zone. So myself and my wife, we went back downtown Cortland and set up the landing zone.
Okay. And you know where the Cortland Fire Department is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And right next, what's right next to the Cortland Fire Department?
You got the railroad track.
Okay. And then what is just east of the railroad track?
Just east of the railroad track, you got the Cortland Baptist Church, and we set the LZ up in that parking lot, in the church parking lot.
Okay. And that's a pretty big area in front of the church?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So how far, just guessing, would it be from the LZ to where Jessica was burned?
Mile and a half, mile and 3/4, somewhere along in there.
Okay. And so you and Sandra left and went down to the, and made the LZ, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Now when you make an LZ, what do you do?
You set up, you block off all traffic coming into that area. Because when the helicopter's coming in, debris comes up from the propellers and all that, and you don't want no cars coming in or out. Taking a chance when anyone getting hurt. And the only time anyone is allowed to come in, you have another fireman's position to let only just the ambulance crew come in so that they can do what they got to do to get her into the helicopter.
Do you do anything, I mean, how do you know where to communicate to the helicopter where to come?
We give them grid coordinates. We have our radios. We have a grid coordinates channel on it. And once you get the grid coordinates, you call dispatch, which is at the Civil Defense Building. You give them the grid coordinates, and they relay it on into the helicopter.
Okay, and that would be the latitude, longitude?
So,
Basically latitude, longitude?
yeah,
Okay. And then did the helicopter in fact arrive?
right.
Okay, and was Jessica taken onto the helicopter?
Yes, sir.
And was she transported?
Yes, she was transported.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
You may cross.
Good afternoon, Mr. Haley.
Good evening.
Your wife is Sandra Haley, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. On that evening, well, first let me start with, you went to Old Highway 51 earlier on December 6th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You recall what time you were dispatched out there?
It was sometime that evening, it was about mid-evening.
Okay. And I believe you testified that you were in your truck. You were not in the truck with the lights flashing.
No, ma'am. We was in a POV, personal car.
Personal car, okay. And you parked in the driveway of that address at Old Highway 51? You recall that?
I don't remember where we parked at.
Okay. Do you remember at all how many vehicles had been dispatched to that location at Old Highway 51 that day?
I know they told them Station 8 and Station 14. I don't remember how many fire trucks was there on the scene.
Okay. And I would imagine you don't recall where the vehicles were parked. If it was station, you toned 8 and 14. You don't recall where they were parked out there?
Probably with it being on the old Highway 51, Station 8 was probably parked on the old original highway, probably somewhere in that area next to the scene, probably.
Okay. But you're not sure of that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Next, you went to the scene there on Heron Road, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may. Let's take a break just a minute, Mr. Alden. Just let the train do its thing.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Okay.
Mr. Haley, I'm not sure if I asked you this. The train threw me off. Did I ask whether or not this is your signature at the bottom of this statement?
Yes, ma'am, that's my signature.
Okay. And this is, do you see the date at the top?
Yes, ma'am, December the 6th.
Okay. So you completed this the same day of the incident?
Yes, ma'am, we did it that night.
That night, yes. Did, Your Honor, I believe, did I have this one admitted at this? Okay. I'd like to ask that this statement be marked and admitted into evidence at this time.
Any objection? Mark is admitted.
Number 12, marked and omitted.
Just one final question, or actually, if you would go down about about 9 lines. See where it says, "My wife Sandra"?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. If you would read just that sentence for me.
Read that part.
Yes.
My wife Sandra Haynes bent down to her face and asked her, "What is your name?" I did not hear her say.
So from that, it was your wife who bent down to Jessica's face? Is
Yes,
that-
ma'am.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor. He may be finally excused.
All right. Mr. Haley, you find excused, sir. You may remain in the courtroom or you can leave, sir. Your choice.
Judge, we got one witness left here.
All right. Well, let's hear that witness.
Casey Austin. Good afternoon, Casey.
Afternoon.
What is your full name?
Matthew Casey Austin.
And Casey, where are you employed?
Flight paramedic with Area Vat Life Team.
And you're actually on the helicopters now, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And back in December of 2014, what did you do?
I was a paramedic for Mestat EMS.
And were you on duty the night of December the 6th of 2014?
No.
But did you, or were you a member of the volunteer fire department?
Yes, sir. Polk Fire Department.
And did you get a call, or did you hear the tone out concerning Jessica Chambers?
Yes.
And do you remember where you were when you heard the call?
I was at home.
And how far do you live from the scene where Jessica was?
5 miles or less.
Okay. And did you in fact respond?
I did.
Okay. And did you respond as a paramedic, or did you respond as a volunteer firefighter?
Essentially both, but on the fire department behalf.
Okay. And when you arrived on the scene as being a paramedic, tell the jury, please, what you found.
So we had heard Station 8 requested Station 14 Polk Fire Department's assistance for a female that had been burned, so I knew going into the scene that that's what I was going to be finding, and I knew that as far as the paramedic training, that's where I was going to go, is to help assist with medical aid. So when I got there, we found, I can't remember exactly who, but there were several fire personnel that was around Jessica, which was laying at the rear of the fire truck on the ground. She was covered up in a blanket. I began working my assessment as far as I can get before the ambulance arrived there, the on-duty crew. Found Jessica to be lying on the ground with the blanket on, like I said. There was a couple fire personnel that had been trying to talk to her, I think, but I was just, like I said, started looking her over, seeing what all was wrong with her, what was going on.
What was your assessment?
Just severely burned, partial and full thickness burns from head to toe. The only thing noted on her was her panties. It was the only place that I seen in my initial quick assessment that was not burned. But from the light that I had, that's what I could see.
And when you said the partial thickness burn, explain to the jury, please, what does that mean?
Second degree burns, second and third degree burns. Second is partial and third degree is full thickness.
Okay, and help me, what does that mean?
Excuse me. It just depends on the layers of skin, layers of epidermis that's involved. With second degree partial thickness, it's it's usually the first couple layers. It kind of stops right there at the nerve endings. When you get to full thickness burns, you're getting down into deeper tissue where you burn the nerve endings and has more charring, more down into the muscle and fat tissue.
Okay, so those are the worst burns, I would assume.
Correct.
Was she in shock?
She was in a state of mental shock for sure, just based off of what happened. I can't recall her vital signs and everything like that to know if she was in medically shock or not, as far as what her blood pressure and stuff was.
Okay. And what steps did you begin to take to treat her?
Like I said, I was just there moments before the on-duty ambulance arrived. So like I said, I just initially did just an assessment, and once they got there, I kind of motioned. They pulled up right beside where we were at. I motioned the EMT that was driving in, kind of did a motion to, call a helicopter for further transport. And by that time, the paramedic had got out of the truck and met me at Jessica's side, and we just kind of started working on getting her off the ground, getting her in the ambulance to where we can see better, get her warmed over, and apply sterile burn blankets and stuff like that to her.
And did y'all do that?
We did.
Okay. And did you, once you got her into the ambulance, did you begin talking with her, or was anybody talking with her?
I did. When we was outside the ambulance, I recall somebody saying, "Who done this to you?" And they kind of clicked in. This wasn't an accident or anything. So once we got in the ambulance, where it was a little quieter, away from the engine noise and everything, it was much more lighter and quieter. I kind of honed in on that, trying to get her name, and essentially getting to asking her, did somebody do this to you? And when I asked her name, she was able to tell me her name. It was a little raspy and muffled, very quiet, but I could make out what her name was.
Were she talking like you and I are talking right now?
No, she was not. Like I said, it was raspy. It was a little bit distorted, just due to some of the inhalation burns to her mouth, but you could make out syllables and sounds.
All right, let me ask you, stop there. You said due to the injuries to her mouth. Would you describe, please, the injuries to her mouth?
We just noticed blackening, soot burns. Some of her tongue was slightly swollen from what we could see. But we did, like I said, we noticed a little charring around her lips and soot.
Now, with her tongue being swollen, was there a discussion about intubating her?
Once we was in the ambulance, we had talked about that, but like I said, with her being awake on the ambulance, we didn't really have the full capabilities to intubate her then without certain medications, which is essentially why one reason of calling a helicopter is they have a little bit more broader spectrum of medications that they can give to sedate and paralyze in order to intubate without causing a gag reflex or anything like that and causing further damage.
Okay. And when you say intubate, tell the jury, somebody may not know what we're talking about.
Just sticking a tube down her trachea, through her vocal cords, down her trachea in order to breathe for her, to secure a patent airway.
Okay. And when you asked her what her name was, you said you could understand what?
I can understand. She told me her first name. I can understand most all the syllables of it. That I could tell it was Jessica is what she said.
Did you know Jessica?
No, did not. When I asked her for her last name, she said I'm cold, and I can make that out pretty clearly that she was saying I'm cold.
Is that unusual with a burn patient?
No, it's not. When you get burnt like that, you lose your thermal, your body's ability to hold in your thermal regulation, so they easily get cold. So she was saying she was cold. Like I said, we were applying sterile burn blankets and everything to her.
And then you asked her, did you ever ask her who did this to you?
I did. I said, did somebody do this to you? Or who did this to you? I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it was essentially who done this to you. And she said what sounded to be Eric or Derek sound. I asked for her last name, and she said I'm cold. I tried to dig a little deeper as far as skin color, male, female, or anything like that, and she just kept repeating, I'm cold, I'm cold. And so we essentially just kind of moved on. I think the EMT was applying an oxygen mask to give her some supplemental air. And me and the on-duty paramedic was working, trying to get vascular access for IV fluids.
All right. And were you able to get vascular access?
We were not.
And why was that?
Just
When you
with,
say, let me stop, so I didn't mean to interrupt you. Vascular access means you're trying to get into a vein, is that correct?
correct, just IV in the vein.
Okay, and you were unable to do that, is that correct?
Correct.
So what step did you take then to get an IV started?
We couldn't do that. The on-duty paramedic pulled out the IO drill, which is intraosseous access that is essentially a IV that goes into the bone to give fluids to the central canal of the bone, which eventually puts it back into the circulatory system. He tried to do that, and I believe the drill failed and wasn't able to obtain that until the flight crew. I think the flight crew got their IO.
How soon or how long do you remember being at the scene before you transported her down to the LZ?
I was on scene prior to the ambulance. As a matter of a minute, 2 minutes or so before they arrived. I think that they essentially pulled in pretty much right behind me. I can't recall exact timing. Once we got her in the truck, I'm gonna say before we started transporting to the LZ, we were a matter of 5 minutes, I'd say. I'm not sure. I don't have the report in front of me, the ambulance report to know the times. I'd say 5 minutes, and then probably a 2-3 minute transport to the LZ.
Okay. How long was the helicopter there when you got there?
I believe it was landing as we pulled in.
Okay. And did you, I believe the helicopter comes from Batesville, is that right?
This one did, yes.
Okay. And the helicopter you fly now, where do you come out of?
Batesville.
Okay. Did you assist with placing her into the helicopter, or is that turned over to the helicopter medics?
I did not assist on this one, being it was so chaotic and there were several people around. Once the flight crew came to the ambulance, being confined space, I stepped out and just kind of let them have all the room that they needed. Let the on-duty paramedic give his report and transfer of care. Then they, once they get everything that they need done, they'll pull her out of the ambulance and put them on the helicopter stretcher and transport onto the helicopter. And I don't think I can't remember if I helped go to the helicopter or not.
Okay. Tender the witness, Your Honor.
All right, Cross.
Good afternoon, Mr. Austin.
Yeah.
You were back December 6th. You were with the Popeland Fire Department?
Pope Fire Department.
Pope Fire Department. And I believe you testified that you were at home when you got the call?
Correct.
Okay. But you were paramedic but not on duty when you went there, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So basically, I know you testified that the paramedic on duty was the person who did the report.
Correct.
Okay. You recall who that was?
Josh Perkins.
Okay. And so Josh Perkins was the other paramedic there, and he was already talking to Miss Jessica. You recall that?
He got there soon after I did. I was the first medical personnel there. He arrived just after I did.
Okay.
On the ambulance.
But because he was on duty, he would have been the one responsible for doing a report.
That's correct.
Okay. And so just for clarity purposes, you didn't do a report.
That's right.
And I know there were some things that you couldn't remember exactly. Do you recall that Daniel Cole was at some point inside the ambulance with you?
Yes, just a minute or so after we'd got her in the ambulance and we kind of started our initial care and everything, he did step inside the ambulance. Was kind of reiterating some of those questions. I believe he took a picture. I'm not sure, but yes, he was in there.
So you said that you heard Jessica say either Eric or Derek?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You're not sure of that, though?
It was that type of pronunciation with, like I said, with her tongue a little swollen and stuff. I'm not sure if there was the sound of a D in there or not, but it was just kind of an Eric or Derek type of pronunciation.
Okay. You do recall that Daniel Cole was in the ambulance and he asked the same questions as the paramedic who was on duty. You recall that?
Yes.
And so if he indicated in his report only that the name he heard Jessica say was Eric, would you agree with that?
I mean, that may be what he heard, because once he stepped in, he kind of took over questioning, and I was helping with trying to get IVs.
Okay.
So
but as far as any documentation of what you saw or heard that evening, there's none that you completed?
Right.
Also, when you did hear Ms. Jessica say Jessica, that would mean that she could make out some syllables and sounds.
Correct.
I tender the witness, Your Honor.
Redirect.
No, sir. He may be finally excused.
Sir, you may be found excused. That means you may return to the courtroom or you can leave, sir. Your choice. All right, I'm a few minutes. I'm going to put you in recess for the day. You've put in a long day, and I have some special instructions I want to give you before I let you go for the day. So I'm going to send you back to your jury room right now, and then I will call you back out in a moment, and I will give you some special instructions for the evening. All right? So